Oh dear. Should we try that again? Good evening, everyone. Aha.
Don't tell me it's because of the women here, right? Yeah, it's women power.
Okay, well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to TyCon. We hope you've had a super day. Perhaps we should start by introducing ourselves.
Yes.
I would like to introduce Ajay Hiraska. He's a governing council member of Thai here in Pune, so he's a charter member. He's a mentor, and he's also a distinguished Toastmaster.
Thank you.
Round of applause.
Thank you. And to give me company today as well as tomorrow, I also have Vandana Saxena Puria. She is a charter member, obviously, very much an integral part of the Thai ecosystem in Pune. She is also a chartered accountant by background. She is a published author, as well as she is also been awarded the Order of the British Empire. So please welcome Vandana also to the stage.
So, Ajay. Hi. Why are we waving?
Why are we waving? Nobody's waving back.
We're called, yeah, can you wave back first of all? Yay. Okay, well, we are called, or we've called this year's TyCon, the second wave. So can we invite up here the chair of TyCon this year, Mr. Vineet Patni, to explain a bit more about the second wave? Give him a round of applause. So Vineet, welcome, and can you please explain to us, why are we called the second wave?
So how many of you all were there in TyCon last year? So wasn't this different? So that's the reason it is second wave, of course, but way more than that. I think the whole theme covers the disruption and the change we want to drive from where we are. I think that's very important. And TyCon clearly this year delivers quality and content. That was our key focus. We really wanted to make sure that these are 2 full days of, a lot of learning. So first day is master classes, and second day, of course, is, we've got multiple speakers, and we have a few speakers now. I won't take away the thunder, but I'll let them talk. And when the whole team was, brainstorming, the whole second wave as a concept came in where we wanted to pick up industries which have gone through consolidation. So how do we really make them change? Automobile, agri-tech, education in Pune, significant requirements in terms of driving disruption and change. So second wave, and of course, you'll hear a lot about Pune 2.0. So I'm going to leave that. And one, something our Thai president keeps talking about, futuristic ideas, innovation. There's a lot of talk that would get covered whatever time we have left from now till tomorrow, and that's the second wave. So that's all about second wave. Thank you.
Thank you, Vineet.
Thank you, Vineet.
We'll get you back up in a minute.
So hope you had a great time today with the open house sessions. How many of you attended the open house sessions today? The deep dives on the master classes? I attended one. Okay. So I think we're going to do an appreciation of the people who conducted these sessions. They did a fantastic job. This is the first time we've done these master classes, and people gave great feedback when we had it during lunch or during the tea breaks. Let's have a shout out for all of you who attended or all of you who appreciated the work that was done. So the open house done by Kiran Deshpande. A shout out. Whoa!
Okay. The masterclass conducted by Anand Deshpande.
The session that we had on branding by Sunil Agarwal.
Idea validation with Ravi Nigam.
And the entire session in track 4, which was held in the room out there, all the open house sessions. A big shout out for all of those speakers, please.
Right, okay, so seeing as we've got the theme of wave, you've all heard of the Mexican wave, right? Yes, Mexican wave where people go like this? Guess what we're going to do? We're going to invent today here at TyCon the Pune wave. Are you ready? So what we want to do is we want to start from that end. You know what you have to do? Ajay, you need to help me. So we're going to start from that end, and we're going to go like this. and then we want to see it ripple all the way across to the other side. Do you think we can do it?
Yeah, so and
Okay.
you'll do this as we move our hand.
Yes.
Okay?
Okay, are you ready? So people over there, we want you to stand up and do the wave. Okay? Ready? 3, 2, 1, go. Well, hey! It doesn't finish here. Let's see. Can we get it to go back? Pretty brilliant. Round of applause for the Pune wave.
So
Fantastic.
this was just to make sure that you're awake, okay? But nevertheless, we're going to give you one more small task to do, right? All of you have enjoyed yourself today. A lot of you have landed up using social media to post a lot of stuff that you had. So now, I want each one of you to pull out your phones. Pull out your phones, please. Pull out your mobile phones, and whatever is your favorite social media option. So we're going to have a Twitter tornado. So please go ahead and tweet in terms of what did you enjoy about TiCon.
Facebook frenzy. Let's see if we can get a frenzy going on Facebook with hashtag TiConPune.
TiCon Pune 2019. And Instagram illumination. Let's have that quickly.
And finally, if you're a LinkedIn fan, let's do a LinkedIn learning. So what is it you took away from today? So we'd really like you over the next 15, 20 minutes. Please keep tweeting, Facebooking, LinkedIning, etc., etc. Okay, great. Just before we get on with our panel, just a very quick thing about tomorrow. We are starting sharp at 9 o'clock tomorrow, so we want you here for breakfast by 8:30. We have got a full-packed day tomorrow. All tracks are in this room, so it's only one track. All of us are going to be here. At the same time that the tracks are going on here, if you're entrepreneurs, soon to be entrepreneurs, etc., etc., if you want to schedule a session with KPMG and their clinic, or with our Thai Charter members, to just talk through an idea you've got, ask for some support, ask for advice, that's all going to be available tomorrow. We've got the Nurture Pavilion. I hope you got a chance to go and see the sterling work our Nurture companies are doing. I was on a panel last week for the Nurture graduation, moderating a panel. Those 6 people on that panel had raised $36 million in funding. So they were people from our previous Nurture panels. That could be you this time next year. So we want to support you. We want you to see what we've already done. And we want to get you to apply for Nurture 8. So more about that tomorrow. You'll get a chance to go to the Nurture Pavilion. And we've, of course, got amazing speakers. And talking of amazing speakers...
Here we come to the opening keynote session for today evening. And the Thai team in Pune is extremely proud to have 2 very, very distinguished gentlemen who have contributed significantly to what is the Indian IT industry or the Indian industry in general. With a huge, huge round of applause, let's welcome Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan and Mr. R. Narayanan.
And let's also welcome our TiCon chair, Vineet Patni, to moderate the proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you for the
Thanks.
energetic.
Oops. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Vineet. Over to you.
You want to come here? You can be in the middle since you're moderating us as though we may get out of control.
So it's actually a pleasure. And it was always a treat to speak to both of you. And I'm really honored today to be here. We always start with Ganesh, but Ganesh is missing today. So we have Gopal and Narayanan. I think that's the best way to start. So we still have gods, and very important gods. So thank you so much for being today. Gopal, I think the first question is, when you think about second wave, what comes in your mind? I think you've talked to, I think, a lot of our charter members, but what comes in your mind?
You know, I've just heard why you called it second wave. I'm afraid I came with a different impression. I said, if you look at the evolution of human beings, for centuries we have tried first to make the human being more efficient at farming, at building a house, at making clothes for himself, his family. In the last 150 years, a lot of effort has been trying to make machines more efficient. And many of us have grown up in that tail end of that environment. I think for the first time in the history of people, we are trying to make man and machine work together in a synergistic way so that 1 + 1 = 3. The power of information, digitization, biology. And so to me, that was meant the second wave. We finished with the wave when you made individuals work. Now the tabla and the violin have to work together. So I congratulate Pune Taikon. I think it's a great idea. You can always nitpick whether second wave or third wave, but it's definitely a wave. And I congratulate you, and the energy I'm seeing in this room confirms that it's not misplaced.
Thank you so much. Narayan, what do you think about second wave?
You know, the most impressive part about the second wave was the wave that I saw happen over here. And I think that whatever Pune wants to achieve, it's going to achieve. They achieved it here. It starts from here. And I'm sure we'll see great progress during the course of this year. Thanks to Tai.
Thank you so much. So, today's topic, of course, is startup versus grown-ups, and we'll try and cover this, use the analogy of the human metaphor to a business enterprise. So, what are your thoughts about the human metaphor, or how does that, relate to an enterprise or a company or a corporation?
I'll speak for myself, because in some ways we are similar, in some ways we are dissimilar. That happens with all brothers. He happens to be my brother, which, as in Bihar, they say same father, same mother, because the concept of a brother in Bihar can be quite wide. I think there's a metaphor is very strong. Any organization or institution that you set up or run, whether it's startup or grown-up, is comprised of human beings. And in the first comment I made, I referred to the fact that startups and grown-ups, there's a lot of human factor has to work with the machine. And I think when a startup is born, it's like delivering a baby in a maternity home. But 5 years before that, or 1 year before that, somebody's been thinking about it, and that's what's happened pre the baby. Otherwise, the baby would not have been crystallized in the first place. Then you think having the baby is a big thing. I've had a startup, but the real work begins. And then it goes through those phases of where you need the diapers and so on and so forth. And then it becomes an adult, it becomes an adolescent, and it behaves funny. So I think the metaphor is absolutely accurate. And what I see this Pune Taikon doing is you're like a coaching school, a Montessori school. People are coming here, they are learning, and it's part of a journey. So I think the human metaphor is absolutely accurate. Perhaps not perfect, but very, very close.
So when a baby grows, right, because at the end of the day, that's very important, and that's where the most learnings happen. What do you think about that, Narayan? When, how do you want to relate? Because, getting things right in the initial days and...
Well, I'll give you my observation, but my brother has been much more involved with startups than I've been involved also in startups, but in a different sort of way. So I think he'll have a different perspective. I find that in management schools, we teach management as a set of principles that can be applied, so irrespective of the age of the company. So whether I join Tata's or Unilever or Nestle, I have to follow those principles. But when you raise a baby, as all of us do in our families, you can't vaccinate the child when he's 10 years old. And neither do you feed him something when he's a baby, antibiotics, because that comes later. And I think the key thing about startups, we use the word startup. Actually, I don't know how old a startup is supposed to be. 20-year-old Flipkart, we say startup. And for me, all companies are startups. It's like age. So I do believe that the thing that you're doing is to produce a grammar to growing up, which is a very important part because it's in the early stages that its threats are greatest. But I don't know whether Naru agrees with this.
So the way I see it, when we join an organization, we keep learning. And what we learn is what to do and what not to do. And the organization already has a wealth of knowledge on what not to do. and they quickly drill it into you, be it organization specific or environment specific. In the case of the startup guy has no fear. Usually he's a youngster, he's starting off, and he can only see success. And I think therein lies a big difference, because there is a learning process over here that he's going to undergo, and he's going to find a lot of learnings. But because he has no fear, there are no boundaries to his thinking. And that is a good condition for creation of innovation. So I think that the human element is much stronger in the case of a startup, because the organization is yet to build, and the rules of the organization as what not to do are yet to set in. So it's a more freewheeling, free-dealing environment, and the conditions are different between a startup and what you call a grown-up. Grown-up being any organization that's lasted more than 20 years, just for the sake of definition.
I just want to add a little point to that, because nobody should stop learning. Grown-ups also want to look young and feel young. So the science changes from raising a child to preventing old age setting in. And in biology, that's called neoteny. Neoteny means keeping youthful. There's a whole bunch of science behind how young people can keep youthful, something we are learning and trying to practice. But one of them, for example, is to be curious. When I look at my grandchildren, it's teaching me curiosity all over again. So I think the human metaphor is very accurate. There's much to learn by thinking of it in the human metaphor. In fact, I've written a book on this subject also. So I'll stop there, otherwise I may go on for longer than necessary.
I might like to add over here that just think for a moment, how does an infant learn how to walk, a baby? She gets up, falls down, knows intuitively that she did something wrong, gets up again, takes a couple of steps, falls down again, and eventually learns how to walk. So put that into a startup situation. If we inculcate into the startup promoter what not to do, too much of what not to do, then that's like telling a baby what not to do and what to do, and stopping the baby from hurting herself when she's trying to walk. Baby will take longer to learn. So I think to some extent, startups should be given a free hand to learn by themselves and not have too much of what not to do.
So, a quick question. Would you put Reliance Jio as a startup or a grown-up?
Asking me first?
Yeah, asking you.
Reliance is a hugely grown-up. Huge grown-up. So Gopal is of the view that because they're entering into a new industry afresh, it's like a startup. I'm sure they've imbibed some of the aspects of a startup, but the cost of failure is not as high in the case of an established organization. So to that extent, I would say that it's not quite a startup.
Well, I have a different view, completely different view. I think, to me, a startup is something where the person doesn't know the way forward, has no background in this. So if Hindustan Lever is launching another shampoo, that person may look entrepreneurial, but it's not he knows a lot about shampoo. But if Velvet creates a shampoo in a sachet, as he did 25 years ago, for him it was a hugely startup venture. So when Reliance gets into setting up Jio, Tata's got into setting up telecom. We were not successful, but leave that aside for a moment. I think they were completely uncharted territories, and I do believe that they also qualify as startups. A startup is one where you have a vague idea of the future, you have a great ambition for the future, you're not terribly sure how you're going to get to that future. And all those are the characteristics of little children. When you send them to school, you tell them, beta engineer banna hai, you have to join, ye karna hai, wo karna hai, Pune Tycoon mein shamil hona hai, all that stuff you tell them. But he doesn't know what the hell you're talking about. So I think if you use the human metaphor, a lot of good common sense comes into play. And I always say this, even in a large company, we have startups, like the ones we just described, and they will do silly things. Now, if the guys in the established divisions say, yeah, itna pagal hai, you didn't even have a proper accounting system, it doesn't help. It's like firing your child for not having done his homework.
But one thing, Narayan, there are quite a few startups or quite a few babies, right? I would say startups who do well initially, but they fail as they become an adult. Any learnings, anything you want to say which are very
I couldn't
critical?
hear your question.
So sometimes the babies are very successful, but they fail as they grow. And
So if I may just answer the previous question first, add something to what Gopal said. I want to differentiate between an entrepreneurial action that Mukesh Ambani takes, which is the entry into Jio, and he redefines the boundaries because he's entrepreneurial by nature. And I differentiate that from a startup who has to, without resources, with limited resources, with bootstrapping, has to find ways and means to do things that he has never done before. So, to that extent, I differentiate between Jio as a startup and Jio as an entrepreneur.
Fair enough. I think we'll accept your point of view. I don't want to make this into a case study on Mukesh Ambani. It may come in the Economic Times tomorrow, so. Go ahead.
And let's come back to your question.
yeah, so basically, baby, sometimes you have babies which are very successful, but they fail as they start to grow. And some learnings you want to leave with, because there are a lot of entrepreneurs here, and if you had to give them 2 or 3 key
So I've been
learnings.
deeply involved with the startup community for nearly 10 years now. And what I have some observations that I can make. I can't be a pandit in everything. The success rate is extremely low. And the number of guys who come into the startup community, the entire startup world has been glamorized. And I should thank the media for that. I think it's a good thing. This entire startup environment is akin to, structurally, to the drug, like in cocaine industry. A few guys are going to get to the top and make the bulk of the money. And large majority will run what we call, angel investors call as a lifestyle business. They will end up running and also ran company, and there's nothing wrong with that, a lifestyle business. You can still have your 2 cars and live well and comfortably, except you're not in the Economic Times frequently. So, in an environment where success rates are extremely low, only the bestest of talents and the bestest of ideas succeed. So I want to just set a context to the environment that we are dealing in. Does that answer your question somewhat?
Quite a bit. You want to add something to that?
Yeah, but I would say that's true of everything in life. Whether you're becoming a dancer or a musician or a professional manager, very few people will get the Nobel Prize if you're a physicist. But I would not regard the others as non-successes. If I become the head of the Department of Physics in Pune University and wasn't a candidate for the Nobel Prize, I can't be considered lack of success. So I think the way I would put it, I think we are saying the same thing, but we are probably placing it differently, is startups which are known to be failures, which means that they fold up. I don't know what percentage it is, but I don't know if it's a very large number, because the purpose of a startup is not to become a unicorn. I mean, I find it utterly ridiculous. It's like going to a maternity home and saying, I like the blue eyes of that child, I'll bet $1 million on that. And when the child is 5 years old, you back him to do something else. That's not the way I believe you nurture talent. You nurture talent by opening up the doors to many people. And then, of course, the ladder starts to come down. And listen, if you're a cricketer, if you play, I don't know, Ranji Trophy cricket, are you a failure? I don't think so. You may not have made it to Test cricket. In Test cricket, you may not have beaten somebody's batting record, but that doesn't make you a failure. So I would like to discriminate. And what we call startup successes are highly questionable successes. I don't think some of them will be around. They may be worth unicorns today. And I think this whole unicorn stuff is it's like Bollywood. It's not real. That's my view.
We have Kiran Rao on the way.
Sorry?
Yeah, Kiran Rao in some time.
So I think that this entire unicorn business is extremely desirable. I think that if you tell a guy who's starting his career, where do you want to live in Bombay, he might nominate Trump Towers as his goal. And there's nothing wrong in having ambitious goals. And there must be several people in Bombay who desire to live in Trump Towers. And it's extremely good for a startup to want to be successful and become a unicorn. Question is, how long does it take? And irrationally, and it is irrational, the startup wants to get there in a hurry. This entire startup business is yet to mature. These are early days. We should not be too judgmental on the startup entrepreneurs or the state of art as it exists today. Eventually, the startups will realize, as VCs will realize, that startups are not made in 3 years and 4 years into unicorns. Those are real exceptions. To become a unicorn, it could take 10 years, 12 years, maybe 15 years. And if you look at the large majority of the unicorns, you take Bharat Matrimony, you take Naukri, these are companies which are at least 20 years old. And the media would do well to make heroes out of the Bharat Matrimonies of this world and Snapdeal, who's fighting with his back to the wall. And these guys, these companies are all at least 16, 18 years old. And it's good for startups to know that success can still come at that stage so that they build up more stamina to stay on there.
But just to pick up one, I think it's a fantastic analogy, but if you look at some of the Tata companies which have been there for many years, and they're still close to, look at Rallies, TRF, multiple companies, and you also look at some of the youngsters who've just come in and become fairly large. What are your thoughts about it? Because they've just, who's more successful?
No, I can hardly argue that all Tata companies are the most successful in the world and everything else is bad. So I'm sure somebody else has set up a better company in 10 years than some particular Tata company, because we have so many children in the Tata company, we are not sure whether it's our child or somebody else's child also sometimes. So that's entirely possible. If somebody hasn't reached a $1 billion valuation after being around for 30 years, I just want to make this point. No Tata company starts by starting and saying, I want to be a unicorn. And internally, we test it only when it's done an IPO. I consider all this valuation stuff puri bhaji. If you want to live in the puri bhaji world, okay, that's another world. I'm not saying it's an unreal world, but it is not quite the real world. And you have to understand, there's a real world, and then there are shades of unreality. This is one of those unreality. It's a good marker. It's like if your child passes 5th standard in first division, you don't declare him a winner. In fact, you'll kill your child if you did that. You'd say, beta, well done, you must come first again in 6th standard. And I believe putting all the Series A, Series B every 6 months is a very American idea. And American Silicon Valley has worked on the basis that you'll quickly get an IPO. They even set up NASDAQ to be able to list these kinds of companies. We don't have that yet here. I don't know, maybe these are worth $1 billion, but when an IPO comes, we'll figure it out. And the track record of at least the Indian IPO market is people list at this price and promptly the price comes here. I don't know what will happen to startups. But Naukri and Bharat Matrimony have listed and they've done quite well.
Yeah.
So I agree with him, Narayan, in that sense, that when you grow up properly, you've gone through the steps. They deliver a profit before tax, they deliver a profit after tax, they deliver a dividend to the shareholder. Those companies can last a long time. And again, using the human metaphor, in every family, when the child comes, you say, you please live long. Nobody says, I've produced you to sell you. I mean, there is a profession of producing for selling. It's called surrogate. Okay? And there are some people probably practicing that. Actually, at an extreme, I feel it's immoral, but I won't go into that because that will create a separate controversy. To produce for selling, But some people give that impression. And it's an impression. Nobody actually produces and says, I brought this to sell. But people say, it's okay. In 5 years, if I build up the valuation, I'll sell and get out. I don't think India needs that kind of startups. Maybe there's a place for it, but I hope Pune Tycoon is not promoting those kinds of startups.
So I reiterate my position that unicorns are highly desirable. I'd just say in defense of the startups which seek to become unicorns, firstly, by definition, a unicorn is a company which is valued in excess of $1 billion, but is still privately held. Now, in a stock market, there are a large number of owners and the large number of shares which are being traded, and market finds its valuation. In a privately held situation, a small number of owners are trying to drive the price up because they would like to exit. And I'm not talking about the promoter. The reasons for the share, for the valuation going up is, at this stage, an unknown quantity. I don't want to assign motives to anybody, but when a small number of people own a large number of shares, it goes without saying that the conditions are ripe for, inverted commas, manipulation. So, the promoter of the company is only facing the outcome. Why are we blaming the messenger? He is assigning, he has no basis of knowing whether the outcome as a unicorn is a result of his efforts or somebody else's efforts. I think this is a very important factor. And all he nurtures within his heart is he desires to become a unicorn. And what he's really saying is, I want to become very, very wealthy. And what's wrong with that?
I think it's a very good point, but you don't need to defend the entrepreneur, because nobody's attacking the entrepreneur. I'm looking at the psychological effect that this has. Because the value of his company is going up, his perception of his wealth is going up. Let me give you a parallel example from some other field. The Westinghouse Corporation in the United States have been giving Westinghouse Talent Science Scholarship for the last 45 years, 50 or 40 years. I think 4 years ago they published a report. They took all the Westinghouse scholars from 1958. I think there were 4,000 or thereabouts, very large number, and tracked their scientific career. Now, what they found is the following. The moment a guy knows he's a Westinghouse scholar, read valuation has gone up, he started underperforming compared to his potential. The report is available in the public domain, anybody interested. I also find in raising your children, if you keep telling them you're a genius, beta, you after Amjad Ali Khan, you're the next one is going to be, you will reduce his performance. It is not the fault of the entrepreneur, but if he psychologically is made to believe he's worth so much, it's like any other field. Premature recognition is bad, and premature huge recognition is really bad. Some of them survive. If you catch hold of every youngster and say you're a future Sachin Tendulkar, I think you'll create less Sachin Tendulkars. That's my point of view.
Well, you defined it. Gopal and I have had these arguments over several whiskeys, over several evenings, and I don't even get emotional about it anymore. The 3 out of 100 are going to get funded. 1 out of 100 who gets funded might make it to a unicorn. And it's because such milestones like becoming a unicorn exist that it drives entrepreneurs to work round the clock. And look at the risk he takes. He takes huge risks. So I somehow feel that this is the market's way of dangling a reward, and that nurtures, and this is something that Taipuna truly understands, this nurtures entrepreneurial zeal to a higher level.
Okay, that's a point of view that if you get nurtured only by valuations and money, I'm a little old-fashioned at my age, I'm allowed to be. I don't think you're going to lead a very good life. If it's one of your factors, I think it's fine. I really think that anybody who is obsessed with money is doomed to a bad life. It's a risk. But then that's a philosophical point, and we have now moved away from the field of startups.
On a lighter tone, our mother wanted to get Gopal married because his salary went up from 900 rupees as a management trainee to 1,000 rupees. She said, 1,000 rupees, he should get married. So the unicorn is a similar milestone.
That's so. I think we'll try and move to a different stage of human life. But just a quick question: why do companies age? Is there something to, how can you relate it to human life? And is there something that goes wrong or they die early?
You see, why do human beings age? I don't want to make this into a lesson on physiology, but if you can get into our body and have a look, our DNA is all clumped together like sort of wool, And if you can imagine, they are like shoelaces. At the end of the shoelaces, there is a little cap called a telomere. Human beings age because the telomeres get shorter. The telomeres get shorter, just like if you use the same shoelace and you keep on threading it, it falls off. Now, the only way, or I shouldn't say the only way, one of the key ways to keep young for people who are aging is to keep your telomeres long. To keep your telomeres long, you have to do A, B, C, D. I don't want to convert this. And it entirely is in line with what yoga and Ayurveda tell you. I think this is what in biology they call neoteny. I think older companies like Unilever, Tata's, GE, maybe Reliance now and all, have to learn the art of the science of neoteny, keeping their telomeres longer. The younger ones have to learn. And I think there's a mutuality in this. And we are actually in the process of writing a book between us because we came with complementary points of view. And we actually going to call the book, publisher willing, corporate Ayurveda. Ayurveda means long life. And if human beings can have a long life, why can't companies have a long life? And whether you're a startup of the technology variety or the traditional SME variety or a large company, everybody wants to give his child a long life. That's a aspiration. I've never met anybody in real life who says, "Yaar, mere bacche se 10 saal mein kaam leke usko khatam karna hai." At least I have not met such a guy. There may be such a character, but right? So I think long life, healthy life is something that we all wish, and our companies are no different. And exceptions apart, I believe that neoteny and childlike qualities add up to a lot, which startups and grown-ups can learn from. And that's the subject of the book that we are writing.
I just like to throw in, I don't want to say something contradictory every time. This is not a matter that I've thought a great deal about. However, it does occur to me, having worked for Nestle and Coca-Cola, I found it extremely suffocating because I was constantly being told, don't do it that way. This is not the way we do it in Nestle. This is not the way we do it in Coke. So I wonder to myself, in the process of aging, as the corporate goes on, are the don't do's far more than the how to do? And are the how to do becoming so restrictive that they're devouring the corporation? Is a thought that occurs to me. I've not researched this, but in the case of a startup, he has no such barriers, no boundaries, etc. It's in the process of building. And that perhaps also answers an earlier question of yours as to why do some startups fail. Maybe they learn too fast, too soon on what not to do and don't do it this way and don't do it that way. So I just thought I'll toss that into the...
Yeah, but I think, just from aging perspective and startup perspective, right, we always know bache learn from fathers or grandfathers, and there's always a talk about generation gaps, right? How does that really apply to corporates, and what is your view or what's your advice to entrepreneurs in terms of learning from other companies or learning from larger companies?
I think, talking for myself, talking for ourselves, because we're doing the book together, and putting pieces together. I have met young people who come and say, sir, I'm 32 years old, I've been working in XYZ company, kuch startup karna hai sahab, samay beet raha hai. I said, have you got a calling? And the conversation begins there. There's a whole process of guidance which I hardly need to explain to the TIE conference. And things that look obvious to me, यार कोई business plan है, कोई इरादा है, funding है, इसे साहब वो सब बाद में होगा, I want to get started. There's something to be learned. Conversely, I agree that large companies can have so many rules that it can get suffocating. And then you have to loosen up those. And I think the book deals with how can you keep your telomeres long if you're a large company, but more importantly, on these growing up phases of this startup. And it is about learning that a startup needs to do short-term things as well as long-term things. And he has to be able to learn to do both. It's tough, but it's with everything in your life. When you're raising your child, of course you have to get the child's nappy problems and crying problems solved for tonight. But you don't fail to think about he'll be an engineer, he'll do something in the future. It is human nature when you use your intuition to deal with opposites simultaneously, short-term and long-term, good and bad. Reprimand my child, but also encourage him. And we do this without any training, and there's no Taikon for this. You do this naturally. And if you can bring that kind of common sense into nurturing startups, that you do the long-term and the short-term and guide our young people, I think your own experience, Narayan, shows that young people can sometimes, and they require the guidance. They're not stupid people, they are very competent people, but they require the guidance.
It does require guidance, but even while you speak, it suddenly occurs to me that, and I meet startups all the time, I meet maybe 150 startups in a year. What is the advice that you would give a startup who says, sir, there's a bribe to be paid. What do I do? Now there is a moral / ethical issue over here. And what would I tell my son? I would tell my son, forget it. We're not doing it. We are not doing it. What do I tell the startup? I say, how much is the bribe? I say, I don't know, sir. I say, go find out first. Because the job has got to get done. And you're running out of time. And the amount of the bribe will determine whether you're going to do it or not. It's not a moral issue. It's not an ethical issue. It's a business issue. That's what I would mentor him and tell him.
That's what?
I would mentor him and tell him.
I could hear that?
Mentor him.
You would mentor him, it's okay to give a bribe.
Yeah.
Okay, I wouldn't. I would tell him exactly what I would tell my son. I don't see why I would tell my son something different. He may not listen to me. Narayan Murthy gives this example when we asked him, when he was once asked, have you ever done, because he comes through as such a God that you say, have you ever done anything wrong in your life? And he said that back in the 70s, he wanted a telephone, the black telephone, and he was told he could get it if he paid something, 500,000, 2,000. He said, I paid. I got my black telephone. At least I could make a telephone call. And I think I paid a bribe. And I wasn't happy. After that, I never done it. So I suppose it's a practice.
So, you know, we are brothers, 1 year difference in age. And for those of you who are wondering, he is elder than me. Went to the same school, same family. And here's one guy saying he won't bribe, and the other guy saying I'll bribe. That's not quite what I said. I said, I'll find out how much is the amount to be paid, and then I'll determine whether the job got to get done or not. So I think that's the way the world goes. It would be difficult for any businessman in India today to say, I am not giving any bribes. He'd fall into the balance 98. He's not going to make it to the unicorn status.
So the trick lies in getting him not to ask you the question. But that's a different subject, the whole subject of public governance and bribery. It applies to startups as much as to large companies. So I don't think that's a subject we can.
And I think it's a very important point, getting the value system right when a baby is growing up, or getting the right.
Certainly, in my view, And there can be differences of opinion, and I can't say that that's wrong and this is right. And each one does what is expedient. But in my dictionary, if I wouldn't tell my child, then I wouldn't get my startup to do it either. But
So I think just to move to the learnings, right? What do bacche learn from grandfathers, or do they learn from fathers? What are your views about how the learning happens, and is there something you want to talk about?
he's dealing more with the bachches, so
No, actually, I've said far too much today already on how a startup should go about it. I just want to add one thing on this valuation business. I think one tends to underestimate the risks that the startup is taking. When the startup signs a personal guarantee over there or makes a personal borrowing, he borrows money in excess of what he can conceivably see in front of him for the next 5 years. And he's personally accountable for it. And I myself have spent 20 years struggling to get out of the mess that I created. So, when there are extreme rewards for extreme sacrifices, it does seem at a very general level as being unfair. As Gopal says, I should not be defending startups over here. I just thought I'll put that on the table.
So any comments before we move questions to the audience, but anything you want to add?
No.
Any key learnings, any key...
I have found, by the way, even though you may not consider it a startup in the classical sense, I have chaired 2 companies which started up, except that the private equity Series A supplier was Tata Sons. And Tata Sons had a system by which they would turn off the tap if certain milestones were not met. And all I can say is this: I tried, without being conscious of this principle, to inculcate both of them with the values. But the behavior of the 2 CEOs was very different. And I just want to mention this in passing. And I was very struck. The penny dropped for me some years later. The short answer is I was chairing both the companies. They were both in the life sciences area. One was related to agriculture, one was related to drug development. One succeeded, one went belly up. And both about the same time, and I was the chairman for both. I was the one which pitched for it in the Tata Sons board. And when I have retired now and I'm able to sit back and think, I found that the significant difference was the behavior of the CEO. One CEO was, I'm the CEO, I'm puffing, and he's spending money like there's no tomorrow. He didn't show any signs of those risks that he's referring to because he assumed Tatas are there. And he was always full of himself and his importance and the risks that he has taken. The other guy was modest. He said, it's a tough task. I have chosen this path. That guy used to travel by bus from Bangalore to Goa for the sales conference. Saying, why spend more money, sir? I can get one more seat in the bus. Why spend by plane? The other guy flew from New York to Bombay to have a 20-minute meeting with Bill Clinton. So you can imagine the scale in which... Now, obviously, they happen to be 2 complete extremes. But it took me 6 years to figure out that I better deal with the second one, the more flamboyant character. But of course, finally, it went belly up. So, again, when I think back at it, I said, people say in Tata's that I should have reacted faster. Maybe they're right. But it's a benefit of hindsight. How much rope do you give to the CEO is a judgment call. Both were startups, both were in similar fields, but I'm very happy that one of them bought was 100 crores and is now worth 700 crores. And the other one, as I said, is belly up. So the metaphor of the human being, at what stage do you reprimand your child, at what stage do you nurture your child, how do you do it, will vary from parent to parent. There is no universal rule for it. And every parent tries to do his or her best for the child. Some work, some don't. And for me, that's a huge, huge lesson in how to nurture companies in entrepreneurship, small company or big company. If you get self-obsessed that I'm taking more risks, then I think it's not good for you. I agree, life has been tough. God does not give you these at the same time. One person might have come out of a slum and got into the IAS. The other person came out of St. Stephen's and got into IAS. If you keep on saying, oh, I came from a slum, I don't think, now you're in the IAS and you move ahead. So, it's a philosophical point.
Narayan, what's your view?
I can't quite see Mukesh Ambani asking that question,
Which question?
whether he should pay a bribe or not. So I think that as far as startups are concerned, they have to face up to the reality of the environment in which we are operating. And ethics has to take a slight backseat. It's difficult, I know, to articulate this. I've thought this over very carefully, whether, I've argued this endlessly with my wife. But I've come to the conclusion that at the end of the day, the environment and the world in which the startup operates in India is difficult to say the least. And I urge you, when you're mentoring startups, you should go out of your way to make it very clear it's going to be a really rough ride.
Really tough time.
Rough ride.
Yeah, but don't keep telling them to bribe. That's all I'm saying. Certainly as tight corn, you don't do that. Okay.
So I think it was a very useful conversation, but we'll just open the floor for a few questions and we'll try and we'll done. We have a few minutes more, so that's perfectly fine. Any questions?
If there was anything questionable in what we said.
I just want to comment on is Jio a startup or not. Any business that is starting new, whether with $1 or $1 billion, totally new, is actually a startup. Interestingly, telecommunication and airline, these two businesses need a lot of capital. By that yardstick, Jio is a startup, and I think some of us will remember that AT&T and BT did a $10 billion startup about 20 years back that went belly up. So we had that conversation. The second thing I would say is, in Nurture, we teach ethics and globality. So ethics is very important. I understand Narayanan's point, but ethics is very, very important. Otherwise, it's a demark that bites into the entire body, which we need to stay out of it.
My question has to do with the speed at which companies work. So we've often seen that large companies tend to move slower, and rate of growth of like 10%, 12% is considered really handsome. The smaller companies tend to grow really fast, successful small companies, and it's not uncommon to see growth rates of 40, 50% a year for several years. However, as the companies become large companies, they begin to behave like the large companies they were being compared with earlier on, and they lose the game. My question is that is it possible to create processes where it's possible for the large companies to continue to behave as when they were small, as in they would continue to be nimble-footed, not have bureaucracy built into them? Like Narayanan, you said, the ability to fall and make mistakes and yet get up and move, and not have the likes of Nestle and Coke, managers come back and say you can or cannot do something else. So is it possible to create, processes that prevent the small company from, once it becomes large, from, becoming slower?
Can I answer that? That's the thesis of our book. Okay. Now, obviously, you can't sort of write down a set of processes in a book. But I want to give you an example in which you have been involved. As you remember, 20 years ago, I hope you don't mind my mentioning this story. 20 years ago, I came as a managing director of Brookbond Lipton. By any yardstick, it was a large behemoth, etc., that you described. We had made an acquisition, the company, in which in the middle of an ice cream business, which was already very small within a large consumer products business, there was tucked away a little food company. It was called Tasty Bite. I said, what is the turnover of this company? It was under 10 crores, 9.5. 2 crores. What is its losses? Something, 20 lakhs, something. Where the hell is it located? In Pune. I then said, sell it, because it will never survive in Hindustan Lever or Brook Bond. People said, how? We don't sell businesses like that. You'll have to go through these committees. And I said, I'll pick up the phone and speak to whoever is required. And bingo, they arrived. My friend Ravi, Ashok, and Karthik. And they said, we are prepared to buy this company. It will be virtually for nothing. And I managed to short-circuit the processes. Not short-change, but short-circuit. And we behaved like a young company. And you've taken that 2 crore company and made it into a 800 crore company, done a marvelous job and sold recently to Mars. And the credit goes to you, but I will take the credit for spotting. And this is what I mean. I was being like Thai, Pune, because there is a synergy that large and small companies, just like grandfather and grandson are not competing. They can work together. And I do believe that it is not startups versus grown-ups, as you started, but startups and grown-ups. There would be no grown-ups if there are no startups. And there would be no startups if there were no grown-ups. And I think there's lessons to be learned on both sides so that you produce a better ecosystem. And I think that's the thesis of what we are trying to write. There are no easy answers, but I think a metaphor helps us to focus our mind. You never question whether it's father or son, but father and son. And that's what I would like to propose.
And you want to add something?
Yeah, I might just add that it's the same guys. If I'd been in your position, the first thing I would have said is, which company do you come from, Ashok, right? And he would have said Unilever, and I said, you don't qualify to be an entrepreneur. I would have straight away disqualified him from becoming an entrepreneur, and I would have been wrong. So it's truly the same people who can, under different conditions, they can do brilliantly and sometimes not so great. That's the way the card falls, and that's the way the cookie crumbles.
I think, it's been a fantastic session. I think there's a lot to learn as the child, comes to the world and as it grows. And if one tends to look at the long term, how the child has to be brought up, nurtured, and certainly the objective is not to sell, but make it grow and make it successful.
So I would like to compliment the work that you guys are doing here. And from whatever I've heard, you're helping that child who just come to your school to go out as a better student and equipped with the context of entrepreneurship. And that is far more important. And I compliment you and thank you for allowing us to come and share our views.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Can I just request a couple of our charter members to come up and give you both a token of our appreciation, and Vineet, of course. So can I ask Anand Deshpande to come up and present a token of appreciation to Gopalakrishnan? And the token of appreciations are over here. Thank you. Thank you very much. And can I ask Vishwas Mahajan to come and give Narayanan a small token of our appreciation? And finally, for causing the Jugalbandi, can I ask Ajay Bhagwat to give Vineet a small token of appreciation from us? The token is on its way. There we go. There we go. Thank you. Okay, big round of applause. Thank you so much. Thank you. And that really was, so while they're getting the picture, that really was a great example of startups versus grown-ups. Every family has sibling rivalry. There's rivalry between corporates, there's rivalry between startups, grown-ups, and startups, and brothers, as we can see. But healthy rivalry, and that's really what we promote at TIE as well. So thank you very much. Last round of applause.